1 in 5 suffer.
Erase the stigma.
Brain difference is not a crime.
Mental health isn't just your problem.
It's our problem.
And now, Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
Welcome to Mental Health Mondays. We're Marla and Dave.
That's right.
I am super excited. First of all, let me just tell you this. Scott Kiloby, who is our guest today, who is here at the end of every month, has honestly made my month's end super exciting, and today even more than ever, because he always drops wisdom and nuggets on us. But today's tips are especially important for helping us.
Yes.
manage our kids.
They work for us. And Scott's List, as we now call it, as we've branded it, is available to you guys. Every time Scott comes on, he gives us 5 new tips specifically in using mindfulness in your dealing with your personal situation. So that being said, today's show is brought to you by the Kiloby Center for Recovery, the Mindful Revolution in Addiction Treatment, and the Natural Rest House Detox Residential Center. Brand new. This is just, like I said, we branded it Scott's List. Mental Health Mondays is giving away a list of 5 steps to communicate non-violently with your loved one who suffers from mental illness. Viewers are to call 866-545-6295 or email info@kilobycenter.com. That's KILOBY center.com. Make sure viewers say, and make sure that you say when you call that you heard about it from, and you want your free tips, and you heard about the Kiloby Center from watching Mental Health Mondays.
All right. So therefore, as you know, I want Scott to become synonymous with being family on this show. But Scott Kiloby is an internationally recognized and sought-after author, teacher, and speaker on the subject of mindfulness and non-dual wisdom as it applies to addiction and other mental illnesses of brain differences. Scott is the founder of the Living Inquiries community and the founder and CEO of the Kiloby Center for Recovery, located in beautiful Palm Springs. When we come back, we'll be on live with Scott Kiloby.
Absolutely.
Help someone who is struggling by supporting the National Alliance on Mental Illness and be a part of the NAMI effect. Hope starts with you.
Hey guys, listen up. Learn something.
All right. Welcome, Scott. Man, we missed you for the last few weeks.
Well, first of all, I want to say that I'm not sure if it's appropriate or not, because it seemed like you wanted to be there, but welcome out of the woods. Last time we saw you, you were in the forest in Idawood, and I'm just saying, I'm just glad I see you. There are no trees around you at this particular moment.
There are definitely no trees around. I'm in my closet right now.
His mindfulness cave.
That's right. Well, Scott, one thing before we actually get started on a regular conversation, and I want everybody to know that if you have anyone dealing with a dual diagnosis, you can call directly to the Kiloby Center. That's at 833-474-4064. That number will appear on your screen throughout the show periodically. Because right now, some of the things that we're dealing with, we need to also maybe refer some people there as well. So, but before we get started with the conversation, Scott, could you remind me what the non-dual wisdom, what that actually means, what that term actually means?
I think you're going to ask that for some reason. I'll try to say it in really simple terms, but you should read about it to kind of understand the full breadth of it. But essentially, is that we take our mind to be who we are, okay, our story, and everybody does it. It's quite common. But a non-dual realization is where you actually see that you're not your mind, that there's a presence here that's prior to that, just to awake in the present moment. And then we don't know that awareness. That's not our experience as presence. And most of us are then caught in what we call like a false identity, which is this ego. And so the non-dual is about, we say, waking up out of that, actually.
Exactly. And, for the record, Scott, I did know that as I read the Natural Rest from Addiction book that you wrote, which is amazing. I recommend it to everyone. Can
I just stop 1 minute and just say this to Scott on a serious level? It is the first time that I can remember, at least in many, many years, that I've heard Dave actually refer to himself as a fanboy to a body of work or a person. I was like, did you just say what?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this because
Prince,
for
you
me,
fanboyed on Prince. So,
I did fanboy
Scott,
on Prince. Yes,
but you skipped.
That's true.
Yeah.
I haven't heard Scott sing yet, so I'm not sure if he fits into the same category.
But Scott's he's on the list. That's a good list to be on.
Well, the effectiveness of his methodology and his methods, they literally just blow me away. So let's jump right in, Scott. Let's discuss the role that family plays specifically in the development of our loved ones who are suffering with mental illness, whether we can either mitigate some of the things that they deal with or actually exacerbate some of those things.
Well, I think one thing we have to get away from is blame, because when you go into this topic, it can easier people might think, oh, now you're blaming me or your
Exactly.
family. But if you understand just how addiction gets started, it's, or mental health, they say part of it may be genetics, but a lot of it is also environment. So the family dynamics, there's nobody necessarily intentionally trying to create an addiction or a mental illness in somebody, but because of the dynamics where there's trauma, child development issues, whatever else, that can happen. And so when it comes time to heal, we have to really see it as a family affair, because all those dynamics were involved in the creation of the mental illness. So if you see it as a full family affair, there's a deeper healing for the individual, but also for the whole family.
And so that's really what our focus is going to be today, as well as eventually us getting into the 5 tips that you have for Scott's list.
And I'm going to tell you that I'm looking forward to those 5 tips, because just on a serious level, I know I relate to a lot of families who are in a support role. I've come a long way, and I've got a long way left to travel, but it is very hard to not, want to use all that you know, which in a lot of cases is very inflammatory almost, or to not blame or to not shame or to not say to that loved one who is the one who seems to have what we will call the problem, that to try to not shake them out of it, or to say, look, this is your issue. And to be honest, and I'm going to be completely transparent because that's all I know how to be, I've done that before. Like, I've actually said, unfortunately, to my son, you are the one. I'm not suffering with addiction. You are. Like, in other words, I don't want to live my life in a way that is all about your issue. And I realized, it took me a minute to realize, wait a minute, that's horrid. Like, in other words, that's not helping him. That's taking more onus on him, and that's going to continue to drive the behavior that he probably hates in himself most. And you can address that. But I have to say that because I don't want anybody who's listening to feel like, we haven't been there, and I'm the one who usually, that's kind of more of what my role has been with our kids, but I'm open and I'm growing. So help us.
Yeah, so I'll get to the 5 tips, but just know that I've done it too. I mean, I think that's how we learn. How I learned is by doing it in a way that wasn't effective. So it's all about how you talk to someone. It's very easy when you're angry or upset to do the name calling thing, even, or to say, you're acting like an irresponsible child, or whatever it is. And it may even feel true in the moment, but until you know how that's received by the person with suffering with that, you really can't know what we're talking about. I've been on both sides of this. So I was the addict who needed help. And so I heard all the people coming at me, and I felt shame around that. I don't know how helpful it was when they were coming at me. But then in recovery, I was on the other side of the thing. And so I understood the feelings on that side. And it is a difficult situation. I think that's why we're talking about it. It's challenging.
Absolutely, Scott. And as usual, we're going to count on you later on the show, not only to give us the 5 tips, but to walk us through a demonstration of using them. And usually that's where, for me, that almost kinetic connection to the information and the process that really just lets it kind of be cemented in my own way of dealing with things. But as you know, this show goes by very quickly. So we're already at our first break, and we are looking forward to more conversation with the great Scott Kiloby. Be right back.
When Dave and Marla get together,
The Kiloby Center for Recovery is the first primarily mindfulness-based addiction, depression, and anxiety treatment center in the United States. The non-12-step approach is based on founder Scott Kiloby's book, The Natural Rest for Addiction. Excuse me, Marla?
The Kiloby Center is located in the beautiful community of Palm Springs, California, and provides 24-hour care for individuals seeking addiction treatment with step-down programs to help clients integrate back into their daily lives.
A recipient of the Joint Commission's Gold Seal of Approval for Behavioral Health Care Accreditation, the Kiloby Center for Recovery is proud to display this symbol of quality that reflects the organization's commitment to providing safe and effective care.
Over 84% of clients reported complete relief from symptoms of trauma, and 95.7% of clients reported complete relief from anxiety. Over 87% of the Kiloby Center for Recovery's clients reported complete relief from depression, and 100% of clients who presented with suicidal thoughts when they first came to the Kiloby Center for Recovery left with no suicidal thoughts at all.
Wow. Needless to say, the Kiloby Center for Recovery's mindfulness-based methods are effective.
So, if you or someone that you love suffer from addiction, depression, anxiety, or dual diagnosis, please, we ask you, contact the Kiloby Center for Recovery today by calling 866-545-6295 or visit the website kilobycenter.com today.
It's time for the Mental Health Minute with Marla and Dave.
Also called affective disorders, mood disorders may involve feeling sad all the time, losing interest in important parts of life, fluctuating between extreme happiness and extreme sadness.
Other symptoms may be irritability, changes in appetite or weight, changes in sleep patterns, or difficulty concentrating.
The most common mood disorders are depression, a bipolar disorder, seasonal affective disorder, and self-harm.
An estimated 21.4% of U.S. adults experience any mood disorder at some time in their lives.
If you or someone you know are experiencing any of these symptoms, distorted moods, or emotional states, please seek professional help. Life can get better. And this message is brought to you by Mental Health Mondays.
David is a thinker.
I never do anything without thinking about it first.
Marla is a feeler.
I basically wear my personality on my sleeve.
But when Marla and Dave get together,
It's like a match dancing with a firecracker.
Can I offer just a disclosure? You feel too, don't you? Never mind. Anyway, Scott, back to you.
All right. Well, I'm glad that Scott actually clarified that we don't deal in blame.
It was a question. There was no blame. It was just a plain blank inquiry is all it was.
But all jokes aside, Scott, I think that's very important that you open right up with the fact that we don't want anyone to feel blame. And there are a lot of times, like Marla was explaining in our personal situation with our kids and those that deal with mental health issues, a lot of times I have to edit what I feel like saying only because even though it's true, it's not really going to be helpful.
Right. That's right. And that's what it's all about, is what's helpful, not necessarily about what's true, because we were trying to help somebody.
Yeah.
And so our language is important. So I was going to go over the tips. And I wondered if you wanted me to give like a real life example or a scenario, or just go.
We want you to be.
Well, why don't you start with the example? And then on the next segment, we'll actually go through the tips, and actually you will walk us through a practice session with us having a discussion using the tips.
Yeah. So let's just say, okay, I have a loved one, a friend, family member, spouse that has addiction, mental health issues. And let's say the person's been spending a lot of money and making irresponsible choices. There's a pattern there. And let's say I'm getting upset about it, right? Because it's affecting me in some way. So a lot of my thoughts when I'm angry may feel true. Like, you have no right, you're irresponsible, you need to change, you've got to stop. Those kind of you statements, if you could just take those out and start by acknowledging you're upset, an I statement. because that's more emotionally honest in the sense that you're upset. See, when you don't acknowledge you're upset to people, but they feel it, then there's a non-alignment there. They're like, you're saying that you care, but your upset
Right.
is telling me you're anxious and angry. And so they feel that sometimes, and that's what we want to not do for them. We want to actually make them feel like we're here, we're an ally, we're here to help. And so in addition to just not using you statements, you want to turn it to I statements. And sometimes, as you know, we have to kind of pull away before we can do that, because we may be in that place where our brain is just very angry. So sometimes we pull away, but whatever we have to do, whether it's mindfulness, meditation, breathing, when we come back, we say, I am upset. I'm angry because I feel like my money is leaving. I don't have any money. I don't know how we're going to survive. I am scared. And using those I statements with emotional words to speak of the actual emotions. And then the people that are listening to that feels like it's in alignment with what they're seeing, because they know you're upset. They can feel it already. And so when you say it, it's like acknowledging something that they already know, and they can hear you more. And plus, they're not on the defensive when you're with I statements as much as if you went you know. So at some point, you know, the issue still has to be discussed, doesn't it? Whatever it is.
Exactly.
And so that's right. So once you say the I statements, if I say, okay, I'm angry and I'm upset, and I stick to facts, like I'm upset because $300 is missing from my account. I'm upset for that. Stick to facts instead of opinions, like I'm upset because you're irresponsible.
Right.
Right. I'm upset because there's $300. What you can see, hear, smell, sense, stick to those things rather than
an
opinions,
assignment, right?
Now, how would I say that same thing when, if say it's like a child that I'm dealing with, my own child that has their own bank account, and you know, I don't want to see them on the street. I don't want to see them destitute. I don't want to see them hungry, and yet they've already spent all their money. Now, I do have the choice by not using any of my money in that situation, but I feel like I'm in a catch-22 based on my love for that child, and I got my money in my bank, but how am I going to not give it to him?
So my question, I have a question for you, Dave, and maybe Scott can help us with this. My question is, when you ask that question to Scott, do you feel like that that you're meeting the monetary need and continuing to give is the satisfaction to equate to care? Do those things in your mind actually go hand in hand? Like I have to meet your need. Okay.
No, they don't. So for me, for instance, and we both go back and forth on these issues where a child especially can push the limit to where if you even list a boundary, the child can say, okay, well, I'm just going on the street. Now, they know, I don't know if they're aware, but in the back of your mind, you're so aware of the dangers that they'll face on the street. I can't live with the fact that child's going to be on the street.
And Scott, you didn't realize it, but you hit a very tangible example, which is good. But because this is great. We can have this discussion sincerely. So when we get to our tips and going through, it'll help us to navigate, in my opinion, better communication.
Well, little did we know that Scott's already taking us through the tips, and slowly but surely. So I'll let Scott continue.
Well, in your situation, your scenario, Dave, you might still say there's still the anxiety. It may not be coming out of my account, but so you'd say, I'm afraid of what might happen to my son here if you're on the streets. And, just again, emotional and truthful emotional statements, no matter whether it's from your account or anyone else or someone else's account. But back to resolving the issue. Once you put it in I statements, you've disarmed the conversation a bit. You've brought the escalation down to where now we're having a more, forthright conversation about this. But once you've stated, like, I'm upset because there's $300 missing from my account, and you explain everything, then you want to sit back and listen and give that person a chance to respond in full, to be heard. And then, of course, you respond again in a nonviolent way and try to negotiate something around it, or set your boundary if you have to. But my point is that when I say that we don't want to make the situation worse, it doesn't mean that we just become doormats and that anything can go and that I'm not going to even resolve the issue. it's not that. The issues do have to be resolved. It's just how we're doing it is the language that we're using.
Well, as that music that everyone can hear is slowly getting louder, raising in volume, that means that we have to go to another break. But I think Scott has pretty much touched on tips 1 through 3 almost of his 5 tips of today's Scott's List. And we will continue when we come back. All right, that pole music, that fun music.
You know what? I've had enough. You are going to be the pole dancer today. Let's see what you got, Dave.
Oh, yeah, you don't want
knock it out, baby. Do it. Uh-huh.
You don't want to mess with me.
That's all you got?
Okay, last week's poll question was, what percentage of state prisoners have a recent history of a mental health condition? Your options were A, 11%, B, 17%, or C, 24%.
Okay, Scott. Our last guest answered, but we're giving this to you. Let's go.
24?
Bing, ding, ding, ding. So one of the things that I like about
is it okay for you? Do you think it's okay for you to be mindful and smart? Can you pick one?
I wonder if the two
one or the other.
I don't like that you're hoarding
the two
everything.
might have to go together. Approximately 24% of state prisoners have a recent history of a mental health condition, and that's very sad. And after the pandemic, I'm sure that number would even get higher.
Absolutely, unfortunately.
All right, so Marla, what's the new poll question?
What
for this
percentage of
week?
adult population in the U.S. suffer from mental illness? A, 11%, B, 18%, and C, 23%. So I'm going to ask it again. What percentage of adult population in the United States suffer from mental illness? Overall population, 11%, 18%, or 23%? What's your thoughts, Scott?
18.
Well, we won't know until
next week.
And I'm glad, because I can't respect you anymore. So
we want to let you guys know and make sure that you contact the Kiloby Center, if not just to get your Scott's List, your tips for this week, but if you have a need, like most of us do, that actually are involved or actually partake in this show, make sure you contact them. And this show, actually, again, we want to remind you, is brought to you by the Kiloby Center for Recovery. We'll be right back.
okay.
All right.
We're
so
back.
Scott, what number in the list did we get up to on that last segment? Did we get through 3?
I think we went all the way through. I didn't mention a number 5 that, that when we're coming to some resolution of the issue, we want to make sure that we're not punishing, judging, or putting anyone in harm's way. That's not the point of the resolution of the issue. But yeah, I went through all 5 of them actually already.
So
let's before you say anything, let's go back and let's reiterate. Number 1, don't say you statements when you're speaking. As in, you can't talk to me that way. More I feel statements. Number 2, acknowledge that you're upset with the loved one using I messages. For example, I am upset with the way we're talking to each other right now. Give me a minute, and then take some time to do some breathing so that you can get yourself under control. I like that, especially because what you don't want all of us who've ever dealt with mental health situations know that you don't want the energy in the room to kind of go up, because whether you realize that or not, that's just going to keep the triggers firing. Number 3, continue with your I messages. For example, I was scared when you punched the wall, and we've been there. I was angry when you accused me of something I didn't do. Don't rationalize and don't blame. That's one of the hardest things to do. That's why we've been kind of focusing on it. Just use the facts. Explain in one short sentence that what you heard and what you saw and what you feel or felt. Number 4, let your loved one speak and listen without interruption. That's hard for some people to do as well. And the last one is, through this nonviolent way of communication, resolve the situation by making sure no one is punished, judged, or in harm's way. I think that whole punitive approach to it is something that's difficult, especially when you're dealing with a child. Even if the child is an adult child of yours, a lot of times as parents, we feel like that's our only leverage in some of these situations, is to leverage some type of punitive response to the behavior that we're seeing.
And you know what? I have to say this, Scott, because in listening to you always, which to be honest, I do intently, it, what you really, I think a lot of us say that we're looking for help, but I think we have to go back to what our actual root motivation is, because if I'm really trying to solve it, then I'm willing to do these particular things. In other words, if I'm just trying to make the scenario or make my loved one respond in the way that I want, I'm not going to be so willing to invest myself in these steps. And so I'm saying that because I'm the parent who's had to really adjust to learning different methods, because I truly want to be in better relationship to serve my children and my family. That's real for me. So I'm willing to learn to and learn to de-escalate and learn to go flat and learn to listen. And I'm taking in these tips and I'm taking in these processes because my motivation is true. And you don't have to tell us, but I think you should first really, I think that when you get pushed to the wall and you really have something you're trying to do with anything, whether it be when you're really sick and tired, and I say this all the time, I'm going to say it here again. There's very often times that I literally have said, I've gone through the whole list of blame and everything else, and I finally go, you know what? I am super sick and tired. And then I pause and go, I'm sick and tired of myself. I'm sick and tired of me. So I need to change. I need this change. So it starts with me so I can better affect those that I love.
Well, I think the semantic of blame is always the thing that you have to look out for, because there are times when we say, I'm sick of me, as you said, what we're really saying is I'm sick of me being willing to put up with you, period. You know what I mean? And so when you say that still gives the message of blame semantically. Well, versus
but you say it to yourself. You don't tell somebody else.
I'm saying if you were to say that out loud.
Well, you don't say it out loud.
Well, Scott,
it's about you.
Scott, here's what I would like you to help us do. Give us just a hypothetical scenario that Marla and I maybe can use and try to use some of these tips and see if we can kind of understand as we go through kind of how the tips are to be used.
Well, do you have any example for me of something going on in your life, or just want to come up with one?
Oh, there's stuff going on, but I'll give you one. For instance, today I actually had to change our health insurance off of one particular credit card that Marla asked me to do ages ago that I didn't actually do. Why don't we deal with that? And Marla will not blame me. This would be so fun. Go, Marla. So wait, first listen to Scott.
Well, so this is an issue that's present right now between the two of you?
Always, for 33 years. Same card, same.
Well, what I might ask, Marla, is what would be your normal way of responding to that situation?
I feel like I've tried many different ways to manage the effectiveness of my financial requests. But I feel like Dave doesn't hear me until I'm at fever pitch. Like if I just say, hey, which by the way, he started. I'm glad he started. He said, she asked me ages ago, right? So month after month, that same health charge goes on the same card that I wanted on a different card. And I just asked, would you please change it? So today I was like, okay, you know what? My normal thing, Scott, would be to say, basically, if I had to be honest, what the hell, bro? Like, are you deaf? Like, can you not? Do you not hear me? Do you not understand?
Oh, number one down the drain.
I feel like Willy Wonka right now. Like I'm like Baruka. I'm about to be sent down the chute of unable to control myself. But I have to plead.
Well, use the tips and try to have the I statements and go.
Dave, I feel like it's detrimental to our financial goals and outcome for you not to respond to me in a more expeditious way. I've asked you multiple times, and if this is something that you would like for me to do because it's just more, you feel like that I'm more efficient at this, please just inform me, and I'd be happy to do what your ass has not done the entire time. I almost made it.
You almost had it.
That wasn't bad, Marla. But the other thing is sometimes these I statements can be ways that we sort of get in the you statement.
That's kind of what I was saying.
I'm horrible at that, Scott. It's the truth. My mouth is vicious.
But I think that part of it is just like, can I just acknowledge what emotion I'm feeling first? Not what the thought that I'm having. The thought is all this stuff, but what am I actually feeling? Am I angry? Am I upset? Am I sad? What is
okay,
that?
You know what? Then I'll say that. So Dave, I feel I feel hurt. I actually feel financially abandoned that you don't take these things, that when I ask for these particular things that I feel that you can handle, that you don't make them a priority. I feel
Dave, can I
hurt
ask you
by that.
something real quick, Dave? How did you respond to it when she changed it? Was it any different the second time in terms of the delivery for you?
If I had to be totally honest, when you say not taking the little charge for the health insurance from one card and putting it on a different cards that we both pay, to say that made you feel financially abandoned, feels like an exaggeration to me. But what I can say is I definitely don't want you to feel emotionally and financially abandoned. So if you're willing, like you said, to actually do it yourself, then that might be one way. But if it also requires me to do it, then I'll make sure that I do it like I did right away.
Dave, I feel I would be safer at Tony and Will's house than staying at our house. And so I want you to be okay with that.
Well, I think we're failing Scott's list, and I don't want this to be a reflection on Scott at all, but I'll call Tony and Will as soon as we go to the next break. But Scott, so to help us with that, when we come back, help us with that delivery where it could have been better, and let's go from there.
I'm a jokester, but what I said initially was actually my true feeling. So deal with that, and when we get back, and we'll close with that.
Bad.
What are you doing?
Worthless.
Don't trust them. They'll hurt you. You're worthless.
It's pointless.
When the pain of schizophrenia meets hope, everything can change. Help someone who is struggling by supporting the National Alliance on Mental Illness and be a part of the NAMI effect. Hope starts with you.
It's raw, real, and unfiltered.
All right, we're back. I'm going to remind you that you need to call 866-545-6295 or email info@kilobycenter.com. That's KILOBY center.com for your Scott's list, 5 tips to help you dealing with non-violently communicating with your loved ones that have a mental health condition or a dual diagnosis. So Scott, and we're going to let this segment go just a little bit longer, even though it's supposed to be really short, just so that you can sort of critique and help us be better at utilizing Scott's list for this week and non-violently and using the I statements when we communicate.
You know, I think the one thing that it demonstrates is this is difficult work. I mean, even on something like that between the two of you. So we put it on paper as if it's just steps 1 through 5. It's just challenging. So one of the things I think I could say to Marla or either one of you is, you know, they say on Google 6 distinct human emotions, very limited number of emotions: happiness, sadness, fear, anger, surprise, disgust. Stick with those when you're doing the nonviolent I statement. Find one of those that match and then follow through that way. And I think that otherwise you did it well. You listened to him, Marla, you let him have his say, and you were working towards some negotiation of the issue at least.
Mm-hmm. And so, and for the record, for all those watching, that was a real issue that we have dealt with for quite some time. The first time that the issue was brought up, I will say that I was actually in a rehearsal environment where I couldn't really do it, even though I said I would try to do it. And then after that, if things get busy, you forget that you didn't do it. But each time that it comes up, but what I will say, using the language that Scott gave us, I did hear the attempt to not blame or have the you statements, but because of the sort of history, I still took it as a you statement.
Can I ask you a question?
Right.
But I kind of want. Can I have Scott address that right quick?
You can, and I'll ask you in the car, but it'll be with a different amount of force. Go ahead, Scott.
But Scott, so how do we deal with that when, you know, because of the history of our communication, the person is already expecting to defend a you statement?
Well, for me, it would be to do some inquiry on that, to do mindfulness with that, because the past of each other is not who we are. Your past is not who you are, although that's what we consult in these conversations. So if we do deep work where we're not holding on and resenting, then we've done our work so that we're going to be less likely to bring in the past in that conversation. So I don't know if there's any really easy tip about that because of how we're built, but it really calls for the whole family needing to heal, whether it's therapy or mindfulness or something, so that we can all stop treating each other like our past and just be with each other here in the moment. Now, at the same time, we don't want to be dumb. Like if you have a long pattern of something, it's hard to completely ignore that. I get that. But at the same time, you can see how destructive it is to bring up the past. I mean, you can see where that goes, right? So it's better to stick with present facts, what you hear, feel, sense, smell, emotional statements. And as much as you can, don't go into the past to try the person in a jury trial for something that isn't happening right now. You know, we're just dealing with this situation right now as best you can.
Well, that's it. I just was going to ask you, and this was something I was going to say. Something in me always tends to just find a way to accept, but to be truthful, because this is really an issue in our relationship, that I really feel like that it's just in your mind, you've decided that it's just not that important to you. It's not that big of a deal. So, right. But
I'm sorry you feel that way, but that's not true for me. So
that was a question. I said, can I ask you a question?
Okay, I appreciate that. Yeah. And Scott, you know what? As usual, not only do you somehow read our minds with what we need for the week and for the month that you come onto the show, but it's also extremely helpful. And we have now tools that we can move forward and deal with some of these conflicts that not only that we can have with our mentally our mentally challenged children and loved ones, but also with situations that mindfulness will help in your daily life. And that's the main message that we want to get across.
And I have to literally just in genuine praise say thank you, because I had an incident in real life a few weeks ago with my grandson, and we literally used that, and he launched his phone underneath my stove. And I said, Cameron, we just need some tools, and just to relax. And and it worked. And I'm not even kidding you when I tell you we apply these things. He's 11.
Yeah.
And I said, he says, what are you saying? Something's wrong with me? I have a disease? I said, no. I just want you to just take a moment. Well, let me show you. We went through it, and it was like magic. So I'm just telling you, yeah, man, you've just been more than we can probably even express to what we are doing to actually bring ourselves to a better state.
Scott, give us some closing words of wisdom before we head out the door.
Just keep tuning in, and if you want more about this work, to read about what I'm doing in the world, go to Kiloby.com, and lots of writings and videos there if you want to go deeper than we're able to go in the 30 minutes here. Right.
Absolutely.
Well, we are too, and we love having you, and our family is now committed, and we're trying to make the time and the appointment, but we will be coming to see you at the Kiloby Center, because we know that the work that you do is needed in our lives. Again, call 866-545-6295 or email info@kilobycenter.com, or as Scott said, go to Kiloby.com. Kiloby Center or just Kiloby, Scott?
For my site, it's Kiloby.com, my personal site. The center is KilobyCenter.com.
All right, so you can either go to Kiloby.com and find out more about mindfulness and all the things that Scott teaches. And specifically, if you need to come to the center, by all means, go to KilobyCenter.com. The help that you need is available, and it definitely works. We are Marla and Dave, and Scott Kiloby. And this is Mental Health Mondays. Thank you so much, sir. And you're not alone. Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.